Good afternoon, folks. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. Good evening if you're somewhere in Europe, and anywhere else you're probably asleep. So I don't know. Good night. Welcome to another fantastic episode of WebPageTest Live. My name's Henri. I am going to be your host with the most today, and we have, as always, a special episode. I don't know. I feel great today. I'm happy. Actually, I'll tell you quickly. Uh, I found my favorite hat again, and I thought it was lost, and it was buried underneath some stuff that I didn't see. So I've been feeling good last couple of days. Either way, we are going to have another fantastic episode as usual. We have a great guest, actually two fantastic guests. But I also want to thank Harry for last week. Mr. Harry Roberts joined us. If you didn't get a chance to watch the episode, but he joined us for a powerful, God, like almost 2 hour stream. But it was chock full of info, action packed. We took a look at one of his favorite sites, well, companies, in fact. He's a cyclist, so we took a look at specialized.com and went through a great audit. But we recorded the episode as usual, and it's posted up on the webpage test YouTube channel. So go check it out if you have not. I'll post a link in the chat at some point when I do have an opportunity during today's stream. But yeah, it was a really good episode. So we do want to thank Harry again. If you go through the show notes or the description, you'll see a few links to his book. That he released last year, and we provided actually, or he was nice enough to provide a discount code. So go check that out, and some other details that people had asked about the Google Sheets that he was using during the stream, and we provided a link to that as well. Okay, so that was last week. Let's talk about this week. And we also are going to have another powerful episode. We are going to sit down with an author who is very close to WebPageTest, a maintainer, and a longtime supporter of the web performance community. But the most important part is the subject matter. We're going to talk about third parties. The lovely third parties that we love to sort of grouse about from time to time. So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on how to take a look at them, how to manage them, and all things under the sun with regards to performance. But before that, I'd like to talk about some things that we've been working on over at WebPageTest. As you know, that we've been pretty active trying to do these streams, trying to put out some content, educational content, obviously. But these streams are definitely about getting to have a good feel on working with WebPageTest and getting to see how people operate, their sort of workflows using the tool. But on our team, we also have others doing some of the same work outside of myself, of course. Shout outs to Tim as well, who also started the webpage test live stream, but he's definitely busy with some of the heavy lifting at the on the engineering team. But what I'd like to do is actually like to bring on another teammate of mine who's also going to talk about something that she's been working on and started. Let me see here. This is the part that I love the most, which is bringing someone else in. Okay. um, I just want to make sure, Mikayla, can I hear you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How is it on your end?
I can hear you perfectly. That's amazing. I
Wonderful.
mean, how about a flawless introduction right there? Like these things never happen. It's always like, the mic, what's going on? Anyhow, Mikayla, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. A little hungry, but I'm good. So, for those who are not familiar with you, Mikayla, would you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on the web page test team and I am the solutions lead over here. So I help different people figure out how web page tests can work best for them and what solution's the best option for them.
Amazing. Um, I mean, I'm not going to have you kind of talk about, how your meetings go and whatnot, but um, I do want to talk about some of the sort of content that you've been working on over at WebPage Test, and I'll have you sort of like expound on what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think it was Tuesday. We released the first episode of what we're calling Unlocking Web Perf with Mikayla. And so basically, what this series is it's just going to be short little videos that where I meet with different members of the web page test team. So people like Tim Cadlick, Jeff Lembeck, Scott Gell. Meeting with different members of the team so that you can not only understand what it is that we all do over here, what are we all working on, but also just tips and best practices around anything when it comes to web performance.
It's amazing, and I know that you've been sort of busy recording some of these sessions. Is there anything that you've discovered along the way that you've thought was like pretty amazing or surprising?
Um, I'd say in general, I feel like working with this team, I learned something new every day about web performance. I know that there's a lot of different things that I talked about with each person that I've learned something new. Um, so new things for me, and also just kind of getting to know what people find the most important when they're looking at different tests, why they're using web page test, perf budgets, bunch of different topics that we're talking about. So excited to see what everybody thinks about that.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad that you've been able to bang those out. And again, I'm just going to post a little bit.ly to the first episode, actually, that they'll be able to check out. And who is the first guest on your episode?
Yeah, so the first guest on my episode is Scott Gill, and he's talking about what makes web page test unique and what he personally looks at first after he runs a web page test.
Awesome. Well, so anyone who wants to go check that out, if you go to bit.ly slash unlocking dash web perf, you'll be able to check out the first episode and first of many more to be published. And if people need to get a hold of you, Mikayla, where should they go?
You can find me on Twitter at Reddy Catchpoint. And yeah, that's
Bam.
probably a
There we
pretty
go.
great
How
way.
about
Oh,
that?
look at you, so prepared.
Let's go.
Shouldn't expect anything else.
Let's go. And so they can catch you on Twitter if they have any questions or even sort of, would love to maybe schedule an appointment. I don't know.
Yeah, if you have anything you want to know about web page test in general, feel free to DM me, tweet me, anything you want. I'm there for you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Mikayla, thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us to tell us about unlocking web perf with Mikayla. Again, folks, you want to go check that out, please hit that link. And I'm going to drop it one more time in here in case you missed it. I'll probably drop it in the chat as well at some point. Or Mikayla, you could do that if you have 5 fingers free or even 10.
I
I don't
do.
know.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Amazing. And yeah, go check that out. And again, you can catch Mikayla on Twitter at Reddy Catchpoint. And Mikayla's last name is Reddy, by the way. So if you're wondering, like, what's that all about? And yeah, she'll be more than happy to answer some of your questions and go from there. So Mikayla, again, thank you very much for joining us. And I'm going to unfortunately remove you from the stage at this point. But I know you're going to keep us good company in the chat. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Amazing.
having me.
Oh, man, it's always my pleasure. Thanks again.
Bye.
Later. So that was a good teammate of mine, Mikayla Reddy. And again, reach out to her if you have any questions. She's definitely on the team to help out. And she's had just like a wealth of experience speaking to some of our clients out there and understanding what they go through and what their needs have been. But most importantly is that you want to definitely check out her videos. The first one is with Scott, our senior experience engineer. And yeah, you'll be able to catch, I think that's like about a 5-minute video and whatnot, but she does have some other guests in the can ready to well, actually we're going to publish those very soon. They just have to be edited, that whole deal. But yeah, man, give her a follow if you have a hot minute. So now to the what we like to call the pièce de résistance. As I mentioned earlier, and we announced a couple weeks ago that we would have the author and maintainer of a fantastic cool tool called the Request Map. So to the stage, I'd like to bring in today's guest and partner in today's stream. And I'm going to add him right now. And that is none other than Mr. Simon Hearne.
Salut Henri, ça
Salut,
va?
salut, salut. Oh, très bien, merci. And how are you doing?
I am very well, thank you.
Good.
Especially happy because I'm going on holiday tomorrow.
Well, well, well. That's the second person in 2 days that I've heard saying that they're going on holiday. So at this point, tomorrow, I'm going to get someone else telling me they're going on holiday as well. But that's good to hear because I know you definitely earned it. And would you mind sharing where you're going?
We are going camping in a national park.
Okay.
So
All right.
not too far away. We're going to enjoy a week of rain away from screens.
Okay. I mean, I definitely understand that. You know, sometimes being on screen all day long can be a little crazy, especially since we watch TV on screens now too, right? So that is kind of wild. Nonetheless, Simon, thank you very much for taking some time and joining us today. I think I'm planning to learn a lot, and we're going to talk about I'm sure all things request map. But the one thing I want to maybe potentially have you share with the audience who may or may not know you very well a bit of your history, how you sort of got started WebPerf, and what brings you to this very moment today.
Yeah, it's a kind of a fun story, I guess, because I'm not a developer and I never have been really. Maybe I just don't classify myself as a developer.
Okay.
But I fell into web performance. I was working at IBM and I moved towns, and I got a call from a recruiter shortly after I moved saying, "Oh, there's a job that would match your profile." I thought, yeah, fine, I'll ignore it. And then I discovered a company that was a 5-minute walk from my house that did cool things with web performance. And I had never really thought about performance before. I ran a few websites and they were not performant, as I quickly discovered. And there started my love of performance, working at NCC Group Web Performance, as it was, where Andy Davies shortly joined and kind of became my mentor.
And I must say that was my earliest memory of you and Mr. Davies, who I used to call both of you the doubles champs, if you remember. But yeah, the NCC group, and and I mean, we could get into a bunch of things. Like I remember the podcast that you guys got started and whatnot, and I was definitely. It was very interesting to see a company just dedicated to performance, and this is such a long time ago. On top of that, we're talking about what, like 8 years or so. I don't know. Correct me if I'm
8 or
wrong.
9 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It started off as a monitoring company, just synthetic tests up and down. And then customers started asking more about why this request in the waterfall was this long. And it kind of evolved into a bit of a performance consultancy over time.
That's amazing. Yeah, I never knew that. And then following that, you went where?
Oh, to Akamai.
Okay.
Yeah, it must have been Akamai. Yeah, the content delivery network. So I was there for over 4 years, and I had 4 different jobs, from being a developer, which is why I said I probably just don't call myself a developer. I worked on the real user monitoring solution at Akamai called Impulse, building new data visualizations for performance, which was kind of my passion.
And folks, real user monitoring, aka RUM, that one monosyllabic word that you keep hearing being bandied around in the performance circles, but that's very, very important to mention. And so you're at Akamai, and obviously being at Akamai, having access to sort of such a wealth of data must have been pretty eye-opening.
It was, and it was nice to have that variety of being able to look at a lot of data and then work with clients on their data to find the issues that oftentimes just go totally undiagnosed.
Mhm.
Because how often do you look at performance from a country where you don't actively have a team, or maybe don't even actively have customers? But collecting all of that data gives you just this landscape of analysis that is otherwise almost impossible to see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that must have been pretty good. And again, the opportunity to sort of, we may have certain, ideas of how certain people, operate, and what the web is like, that they experience and whatnot. But to have the raw data has got to be, something else. And again, either confirming what you believed, and or sort of, shedding some new light, and having like suddenly greater insights on what's happening. I have to share this comment right here, since it was so kind of this person to share. I was going to say Simon. Pardon me. Simon's such a nice and talented guy. Yes, he is. Met him at a meetup in Dusseldorf, Germany. Meetups. I can't wait for those to come back. But there you go. Simon. And
Lovely.
I was going to, pardon me?
I said, that's lovely. Thank you.
It was actually. I know that you're also at one point, well, I want to say at one point, but still ongoing until further notice, but conference and meetup organizer. What was that experience like?
As someone who has organized meetups and conferences, you'll understand the preparation, the stress, everything that, all the negatives of organizing an event. But yeah, running Delta V conference in London, which was a front-end performance conference, and the London Web Performance Meetup group. It's just fantastic. And I think it's the reason I kind of latched on to web performance is the community is so warm and open and happy to share.
Yep.
I haven't seen any community like it where if... Ooh, am I still here? Excellent.
Yes, you are.
Yes, so the meetup was great. Fantastic. I think I've got a bit of a delay. But I think that the nice thing is that everyone is so willing to share their ideas, their experiences, their thoughts. And because there's no perfect answer, what you measure, how you measure it, how you optimize, it's nice that there's such diversity of thought around performance. And trying to bring that together into a meetup or a conference is always, enlightening.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have to say, you're one of the few persons around who can say they have that kind of experience from, working at dedicated performance organizations, and, running dedicated performance events. And it is quite the experience. And, for anyone who had the great fortune of experiencing the London Web Performance Meetup, I mean, I've said it before, and I'll come out and say it again. Absolutely, top shelf, probably the best meetup, performance meetup for sure. And even, I would certainly rank it in the top tier of meetups for the content, the guests that were there, and again, for those not familiar, London Web Performance Meetup was streaming live before they needed to. So I was able, being in Toronto, able to attend or watch this meetup regularly. I think it was like 2 o'clock on Tuesdays for me, something like that, 2 in the afternoon, and it was fantastic. I loved watching it live. It was clear, ahead of their time, certainly. So I do want to thank you for all, you and the team, in fact, for the great efforts that were put into putting that out for the community specifically. long story short, WebPageTest, we're here to sort of, we're going to try to resurrect that whole feel of community and meetups, because there's a lot to be shared, and there's a lot to learn within the meetup community. But that's a separate topic. I don't want to spend too much time on that. That said, let's talk about community. Let's talk about, some of the stuff that you've been working on and have worked on, and in fact shared with the community. And we're here to talk about Request Map, your baby, what you authored, and what you maintain. And believe it or not, folks, Request Map generator, is that what we should call it, or just Request Map?
I don't really know. Request Mapper, octopus thingy.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of names.
I'll say Request Map, but how can I put it? So Simon, years ago, wrote this and authored this tool, which was fantastic at the time, still is to this very day, but it turned 7 just a few weeks ago. Is that not correct?
So I was trying to work this out. The genesis of Request Map was in the Christmas holidays 2014.
Wow.
So yeah, just over 7 years old.
Incredible. And again, I feel like I remember when it came out, and which is why when you had a conversation, we had our conversation just a few days ago, and I was just kind of like slack-jawed, thinking like, no way, 7, wow. But that said, let's get into the crux of today's matter. And we're going to look at Request Map and all things third parties, because we all know that third parties can be quietly a hindrance to web performance, and which is essentially why Request Map came about. Is that not correct?
Yes. Yeah, it was a really old one. The reason I built it is I had a client when I was working at NCC who were a UK e-commerce fashion retailer launching into Asia. And they launched in China and got loads of feedback that the website was unusably slow. And we didn't have WebPageTest in China, so we needed to work out what was going on. It turned out that through remote debugging with a proxy in China, we saw requests to Facebook, which are blocked by the firewall. And the retailer said, we don't use Facebook. We haven't got any Facebook plugins. So I ran a web page test, and sure enough, down in request number 170 something was a call to Facebook. So I clicked on it, I looked at the initiator and tried to track back where that Facebook call had come from. And it's possible it took me maybe half an hour, but I thought this is really interesting because we have these waterfall charts, which are hundreds, thousands of requests long. And once you get down past the first 10 or 20, past the head of your document, it becomes really tricky to understand where they come from. And I have an interesting, not a mental disability, but I have an interesting problem, which is I can't picture things. I don't have a visual imagination. It's called aphantasia. And so I had no way of trying to understand in my head how these things link together. And that's why I thought this is a perfect use case for a network graph, which is something I'd studied back at university many years ago, where we've got these lots of relationships, and network graphs give us this huge amount of variability, a number of dimensions that we can use to display data, size, distance, color, and that's where it came from.
Nice.
The original request map, which doesn't exist anymore, it's been replaced, was this amazing lump of PHP, which called the XML API from WebPageTest, and then parsed the XML into JSON, because I didn't realize there was a JSON API, and was very fragile, but it sometimes worked.
Hey, it was the genesis of what became Request Map today. And so I know that right now you have your own consultancy, and I would imagine that as much as you do a lot of profiling perf, you must also include Request Map in all your sort of like endeavors.
Oh yeah, and I think what I've discovered over time is we, as web developers, as website owners, have got a lot better at dealing with third parties. We tend not to have blocking requests to cross-origin domains in the main. So third parties have almost kind of lost focus, I think, with a lot of development teams. So I use request map to just bring that visual to life. It was also really useful when you're presenting something. Say you've got a slide and you want to show how many third-party requests there are. You could show a heat map or a bubble plot, or request map managed to get all that information into one space. So I do use it quite a lot.
Fantastic.
But for first-party content as well. First and second party, so image CDNs, being able to show how many bytes are coming from different parts of the internet can be really enlightening.
And so, how about this? For those who may not be familiar with request map, but even before that, the idea or the term third party, would you want to sort of break down what would be like first, second, and third party for someone new?
Yes. So I think there's some contention about this, but first party is code that you own hosted on services that you control. So that's your HTML document being served through a CDN, that's first party. If you're using, say, an image optimization service that's delivering your content, but you don't control the delivery of it, that's what I would call a second party. And then third party is everything else. So your analytics tags, your marketing, your tracking, your advertising, that's the fun stuff, in my opinion.
Like that's like, I have zero control. I don't know who that is that came to my party.
Yeah.
They had no
at
invite.
your party and you didn't invite them.
Exactly. I know Tammy Everett's, I believe at one point she talked about third parties, and at one point she referenced fourth parties, but we can get into that afterwards. Well, I mean, I was going to say, let's probably get going. Maybe look at some sites that you may have set aside. The one thing I did want to mention, I think it just vanished. Okay, whatever. It'll come back at some point. Did you want
a puff
to
of smoke coming out of your ear?
exactly. It's like, I don't know what just happened right there. Did you want to potentially share a screen, and I'll pop it back up?
Let's do it.
All right. And so I'm going to add that to the stream, and we should be up and running. So, that said, let's imagine that right now we are in a full-on consulting session. And what would be the first thing you would look at?
Oh, good question. Not good for this page. So actually, maybe. So what I've got here is a film strip comparison, which through one of my favorite secret features of WebPageTest, which is to go to the visual comparison option, of the top 10 global news websites. And I picked on news specifically because the majority of revenue in publishing and news is through advertising. So this is where we can have some real fun with third parties and request map.
So what you're saying is essentially, if we start to mess around with third parties in news sites, we're messing with their money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt as well. If you talk to someone who's in a digital team at a publisher, the advertising world, the digital advertising world is so complex, with header bidding and then separate platforms built by Facebook and by Google. I don't. How about that? I don't understand how advertising works in its entirety for digital. And it seems like you add maybe 3 different ad providers, you put some slots on the website, and then there's this race. I have this visitor from Virginia, which is where I've run this test. I don't have any information about them because they're a brand new profile. What would you pay to place an ad in front of them? And then there's some thinking that goes in the background. And then there's a bidding process where, say, DoubleClick says this advertiser is willing to pay 3 cents to have this ad shown on the page. And eventually that ad will appear. And if someone clicks on it, the publisher gets a bit of money. But because there's this bidding process, there's the desire to have as many different advertising providers as possible have candidates to go onto this page. So you often see ad networks being added seemingly randomly, that you've got 5 or 6 different ad networks all fighting each other to get ads on the page. And this can lead to a lot of third-party requests. That's how I see it. I may be totally wrong. But yeah, digital publishing is an interesting space.
It certainly is, and I do feel for them. All right, so let's start let's go through your sort of workflow, your entire process, and make some discoveries.
Awesome. So I'm in the WebPageTest, or the video comparison, which gives me all of the screenshots. But the first thing I normally do when I go to the comparison page is open up my settings and fiddle. We all care about layout shifts, thanks to Google and the page experience ranking factor. But I like layout shifts when I'm thinking about third parties, because if you have allocated an ad slot in your page, as in you given the space in the rendered page for that ad, you don't block the page waiting for an ad. Well, hopefully, which means that if you do get an ad delivered to that page, you might see content shift around. And on publishers, that's normally the biggest cause of cumulative layout shift, or high cumulative layout shift scores. So here I'm going to start looking at the layout shifts. I've zoomed in my screen so we can share it on the stream. So what I might just do is use one of my bookmarklets to give me big film strips.
Okay.
One of my other favorite features is by default in the film strip settings, you've got a number of different intervals, which allows you to kind of zoom in and zoom out. But if you set it to 0.1, it just updates a query parameter on the URL. At the moment, we've got interval is 500 milliseconds. And if you wanted 250, you can do that.
Okay. All right. Let's go hacking the system.
Oh, yeah.
By all means.
So let's look if we've got any big layout shifts. 0.4, that's a big one, but it's when the page renders. That's a pretty nasty layout shift. If I'm looking for something that's caused by ads, this one on CNN is going to be an interesting one. So we see at the frame at around 5 seconds, a small shift. And then around 7 seconds, we get a pretty big shift. The score is actually lower than I would expect, because it looks like half the page is shifted. But we've got a 0.2 score. So I'd be looking at this one to see what's going on, whether we can improve the way that the space is allocated preemptively for the ad. Another tip, see if this ends at 30 seconds. That doesn't by default mean that the page finished loading at 30 seconds. We normally have the comparison endpoint set to visually complete.
Yes.
I often switch it to fully loaded. Let's go back to big film strips. We're on CNN. So there's 30 seconds gone. There's 60 seconds gone. There's 90 seconds gone. So the full load of CNN was 1.5 minutes.
Wow.
I believe this was at cable as well. So not a fast page.
So at that point, you had a visual complete around 30 seconds, and you had a fully loaded around 90 seconds.
Yeah. So what's happening in the middle?
Exactly. So what is your, without actually checking, what are you thinking at this point?
So a big delay like that 60-second delay, is either going to be an asynchronous request that is timing out, or it's just going to be a massive chain of requests that keep bouncing back and forth between each other. Sometimes you'll see a redirect loop, and if the redirect's slow enough, you'll get a 30-second or a 60-second delay. But oftentimes, on publishers specifically, it'll just be a large amount of third parties.
Wow. And you just mentioned redirect loops, and I've had the opportunity of seeing, I think maybe one, where in fact the browser will tell me, it's like, hey, there's a loop going on here, and I'm ending this, quagmire. How often do you encounter that in the wild?
So if it's the page that you're looking at that has a redirect loop, which I have done to myself so many times through poor coding practice, then it's pretty obvious, and it doesn't happen very often. oftentimes you'll see it occur on an HTTP to HTTPS redirect, where there's something wrong in the config and it keeps bouncing back. But if you type the URL in properly, it will work. With sub requests in the page, you won't know about it at all, assuming it's not, say, the CSS file that's broken. If it's a third-party resource, it'll just fade away into the distance as the browser gives up after a while. So I think it's probably not very common, but it's one of those things that you don't know how often it happens because there is no impact.
Yeah, it's got to be strange. Okay, so now we've discovered that the fully loaded is 90 seconds, and we're going forward.
Yes, so 90 seconds, 22 megabytes. These are all numbers that make me, well, as a consultant, they make me happy because there's lots of opportunity to improve if this was my client.
Yeah.
But as a consumer of the internet, this makes me scared. One thing to note is if I'm testing publishers, I will often test from the US because in most of Europe, you will have a consent, a cookie consent or a GDPR consent, which blocks most of the third parties from loading at all. There's ways to get around it in Europe, and we can discuss that later.
Yeah.
But that's why I like testing from the US because we can do it in bulk, just get everything and see what our US visitors are seeing.
No, that's very, very smart, especially with the GDPR, simply because I remember very early, I think, when GDPR really landed and was, up and running. I think a gentleman who's a good friend of the stream by the name of Paul Calvano had done, I think he has a blog post out there looking at a few sites, or one in particular, one in the US and one in Europe, and vastly different loading. It was incredible. It was 100 requests versus 15. So it was something to consider. Anyhow, I just wanted to interject with that.
Yeah, no, it's a really good observation. So Edition is the global version of CNN, which has the cookie consent and GDPR compliance. I do have an ad blocker at the DNS level, which will help here. But yeah, 76 requests and 3 meg in 1 second on a 100 meg connection. So Edition is fast, and part of it is because of regulation. So as much as we may not like GDPR and cookie consent laws, when we're implementing them and dealing with them on a daily basis, clicking I accept, they do help keep the internet a cleaner place.
Wow. Incredible. Thank you very much for that.
All right. Yeah. So one thing that is surprising on CNN is the total blocking time is only 1.8 seconds. So if the main thread was busy a lot, which is what we often see with maybe poorly implemented or poorly developed third parties, you might see a total blocking time of 30 seconds. And I believe we have an example of that. So low total blocking time makes me happy. And a reasonable LCP at cable. It's quite hard to get a 2.5 at cable for a big production website. And most users, and RUM will tell you this, will have a connection which is faster than 5 meg. Not to say we shouldn't optimize for the long tail for people on poor connections, just it's hard to achieve 2.5 at cable. Okay. How long do we think this waterfall is going to be?
CNN, 22 megs. I'm going to predict probably in the 400 requests.
I think that's conservative.
Oh my goodness.
So there's our 90-second mark. There's document complete.
Is way out.
7 seconds. So we're looking to see where this madness ends. So here's a lot of redirects. Redirects are used in ads to share information between providers.
Wow.
So you'll often see a lot of yellow on publisher waterfalls.
A 404.
403.
Oh, 3. Okay.
Yeah, a couple of 403s. Some ad networks and ad providers are a little bit sneaky, and they will block synthetic testing agents like WebPageTest. A quick way to test is to in your advanced config, disable the PTSD user agent string addition. So we're a little bit better at pretending to be a real browser.
Okay.
There's a 15-second 503. So something's going wrong on their end.
Wow. Okay.
That's probably a timeout, and it's the proxy server or the reverse proxy that's giving us the 503. And I'm just going to start going a bit faster. Aha, here we go. So I wondered if a 90-second page load time would be due to a timeout. And here we see a 70-second 504 response.
Wow. Okay.
So it might not be as bad as we think. Okay, it's still pretty bad.
So what's the count at this point?
770.
All right. 770. I was off by 75%.
But the main thread is looking nice and quiet. It's mainly just downloading content. These turquoise, cyan, these blocks are video segments. So there's a auto-playing video somewhere. But that is a lot of video to have on a homepage. And that's where the size will be coming from.
I was going to say, and that's probably, with even a short video clip, could come in at like a couple megs easy. And if you add those up, that's, you're going to get 10, 15 out the gate.
Absolutely. So if we quickly pop up to content, if we're looking at where the bytes come from, then 77%, 17.5 megabytes of video auto-playing. I don't think it's on the homepage because above the fold, I should say, because remember the visually complete stopped at 30 seconds.
Exactly.
If there's a video playing with keep capturing film strips, screenshots.
That was awesome. So for anyone watching and following along, and I'm just going to mention this very quickly, we were able to, with a bit of information right away, so between the waterfall, the film strip, actually just between those two bits right there, we were able to determine that we had a visual complete of about 30 seconds, which was okay, we kind of get it. But the fact that there was a fully loaded at 90 meant that something was happening in that 60-second period. And the waterfall was able to indicate that not only did we have a large amount of requests, but a lot of the I'm assuming a lot of those requests, the video requests, were probably coming in that 30 to 90-second period. And that was able to explain the 22 megabyte load, the 90-second fully complete, and what else did we take a look at? Like essentially, we were able to sort of like investigate and find out what some of the issues were with some of our initial concerns.
Absolutely. Now there's one of my favorite graphs in WebPageTest, which is the connection view. And you can learn so much about what's going on, whether HTTP2 is being used, whether connection coalescing is being used, and how long is spent on each, origin, which could be first party or third party. So we can see that www.cdn and i.cdn.cnn are coalesced, which means they're both hosted or at least served from the same IP address, and they share a TLS certificate, and they are served using HTTP2. So otherwise it can be a bit confusing when you see domains together. You'll see google.com and DoubleClick coalesced as well, which is a really strange one to see.
Yeah.
So we can see the content from the page that we care about. The news is text in an HTML page. It was downloaded within less than a second. That's when the blue bit ends. Blue is HTML download and orange is script. So the majority of the time you spend waiting to see something, which is that green line, is spent doing stuff other than just rendering text to screen. And surely if someone goes to cnn.com, they want to read the news.
Yeah. That is quite the lengthy connection view, because we generally don't see them that long. They're like, okay, cool. But this is ongoing.
Yeah.
Holy
It really
smokes.
is. 262 origins or connections.
Wow.
We've got a lot of connections to Outbrain.
Hmm.
If I see lots of connections open, well, there's 6, so that tells me it's probably HTTP 1.1,
Hmm.
which the browser will open 6 connections or up to 6 connections to. We can't click on that, but we could find it just to confirm. Sync.outbrain, yeah, H1.
Wow. That is
Oh, cool.
always surprising to still see. And I shouldn't be, because H2's had great adoption, but it's still not where we believe it is. And there's still a significant amount of H1 floating around.
Yeah, in some cases that makes sense. If it's an API endpoint that just has one connection to it and you deliver content back,
Yeah.
then the benefits of H2 won't really be visible.
Significant. Yeah.
But for a third party like this, where there are multiple calls, this one's coming from Outbrain OB user sync.
Mhm.
So that's that syncing stuff we often see with redirects is this is who I think the user is, and then different identity providers, different ad identity providers check to see if it's the same user. Well, that's Outbrain. That's requested by, yeah. So this is all coming from widgets.outbrain.com.
Wow.
Going to different places. So they would probably benefit from H2. That said, they're not in the business of performance, so who knows?
Wow. 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 Impressive. And again, that connection view, I'm just really still just amazed at how long that is. Um, like I've not taken a hard look at CNN of late, but I know they tend to be the example site of choice.
I mean, now we see why.
Absolutely. And that makes me wonder, are they achieving their goal in terms of, because we've mentioned that a lot of this is driven by um, income.
Yeah.
And I would hope that 700 requests, 400 connections, they're able to drive some kind of monetary value from it.
And that's where I would defer to an expert in the digital advertising space, because
Mhm.
it doesn't seem to make sense that adding that much bloat to a page will have the ROI of
Mhm.
increased ad revenue.
Mhm.
We know that people will bounce if pages render slowly. Granted, third parties aren't necessarily impacting render too
Mhm.
much, but if this page looks like it's constantly changing, which is what we see with this layout shift here,
Mhm.
then users won't be happy. They might not hang around.
Yeah.
And if they don't hang around, they're not going to see ads, so they're not going to get like kind of the ad viewability,
Absolutely.
and they're certainly not going to click on them, so they don't get their CPC, cost per click.
Wow. So once we've sort of seen all of that, and again, we're not to interrupt your sort of like investigative workflow here, but where would you go next after sort of discovering all of this?
So my temptation is always to look at first contentful paint.
Mm-hmm.
So which color green is it? Anything that's before the first green line
Mm-hmm.
is potentially something that's slowing down that first contentful paint.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really upset that FCP isn't a core web vital, because it's such an important milestone in the user experience, going from the previous page. So
Yes.
if you click on a link on Google, you still see your search results for a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds until the first render happens. This is such a great opportunity to improve performance, to improve user experience, and improve all those business metrics that people seem to care about, like bounce rate and visits. And I think the trouble we have as an industry, as a community, it's really hard to track the impact of that. Because if someone leaves before this 4-second mark,
Mm-hmm.
there's no data. We haven't caught analytics. We haven't caught RUM. And we don't have anything in our toolbox to say, yes, 20% of your visitors are leaving before the first paint event.
Mm-hmm.
unless you've got something clever that can pull your logs from your CDN to see a request coming in and compare it to your analytics. But that's always messy because analytics can be blocked. So we're missing a tool here. We have to just rely on the data that Google published many years ago with DoubleClick to show bounce rates 40% over 3 seconds for first paint. But for me, this is all big opportunities for improvement. And the obvious things are a giant React bundle, 1.4 meg.
Oh boy. Okay.
So,
wow.
server-side rendering has been available in React for a while. That would be a quick win. And then we have a lot of fonts, which I'm going to guess are preloaded because I don't think layout has happened yet. So we've got highest priority, which probably means they're not preloaded. Pat's on the stream. He might be able to add in the comments. But yeah, preloaded web fonts is a really interesting one because for some websites, it can have a really positive impact, especially if you block text render until the web font is available. But if you have 500K of web fonts, then all of these preloads kind of cannibalize bandwidth away from other more important things for rendering, like in this case, a solid chunk of JavaScript download.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
So preload with caution.
Yep. Was this a CNN site? I can't remember, but I remember coming across this one site where someone had just basically cut and paste preload, through like, I don't know, it looked like 24 resources, and it was pretty out of control. So it does require a lot of meticulous assessment of what is necessary.
And I think quite a few front-end frameworks preload the JavaScript bundles by default. And there's this pattern of preloading at the top of the head and then having a deferred script at the bottom of the body. But it seems to forget about the look-ahead preparser in browsers, which will pull those script tags up if necessary. So it's kind of like a non-blocking but fast JavaScript loading pattern.
Yeah.
And if you're using server-side rendering, you don't need those scripts to be loaded as a high priority.
Yeah.
So you'll often see just every Webpack bundle listed as preloads. And if you've got 30 or 40 of them at 2.5 megabytes, then that's a good opportunity to save some bandwidth early in the process. When it's pretty important to get things rendered to screen.
Yep.
But
again, the investigative nature of this work.
Yeah, and it's so fun. The community is great, but the challenge is fantastic because every website is different. Every JavaScript framework is different. Every third party is slightly different. And it's more art than science, I think. Choreographing how content is sent to a browser and rendered to a screen is a really fun challenge to work on.
Certainly.
Right.
Now,
I'm going to jump to request map.
Awesome. I was just going to say, like, where in this in your workflow do you then inject request map?
So I will always render a request map for a WebPageTest test. Mainly because it just helps me understand the structure of the site. Now, this one will take a while. So we're rendering 770 nodes, which are just the requests. And it's rendered as a physics simulation in JavaScript in your browser. I'm sure there's some way I could improve the performance using a web worker or WASM or something funky. But hey, who's got the time? So
I mean, this could be a call out to contributors.
Oh yeah, potentially. So what I'm working on at the moment is a beta. I'm just going to open that up as well. Because it's a background tab, it's given low resources, so this won't be rendering in the background. But the new version is a little bit quicker, and it doesn't have PHP. It's all client-side code, which makes me very happy.
I mean, PHP developers might take that as a slight, but we're good. We're good, PHP.
Yeah. No, PHP got me into coding.
Let's go.
It certainly wasn't the C# course I did at university. All right, now we can see why this took a long time to render. And the physics simulation isn't actually stopped. If we zoom in, maybe it is.
Okay. So let's step back for a quick second. Now, you mentioned that you now understood why it took a long time, and what would that be?
So to render the request map took a long time because there's so much stuff on the screen.
Okay.
And each of these is its own body in the physics simulation, so it just takes a little time to resolve. They're randomly placed on the canvas to start with, and then brought into line.
Okay.
So what I'm looking for in a request map are generally three things. One is big objects. So the size of each node is related to the size in bytes of that file.
Okay.
We've got a lot of pink here, which is video. There is a legend hidden away under here.
I was just going to say, where's that legend?
Unknown. So we're currently grouping by third-party category. So we've got a lot of advertising in yellow. And pink is unknown, which means it's not first-party. We can't classify it as third-party. So we're just going to call it unknown.
Okay.
But this is because they're serving videos through a separate origin. And there's this giant cluster of video objects.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, anything big gives me an indication that something could be improved. So whether this is lazy loading and deferring that video until someone scrolls into view, that's probably a good recommendation.
So for anyone sort of looking at this and they're like, okay, what's going on? The blue area is essentially the center of it is we're looking at our HTML document.
So at the moment, this is all requests from www.cnn.com.
Yes.
So we double click, then we've got the HTML document is here, connecting out to everything. But we still have other stuff coming from www as well. Like there's the JavaScript React library.
And if we zoom out, and just so that to sort of like outline what may be a pattern, or shouldn't be a pattern, but something to take note of, any massive cluster removed from that www is likely an issue.
Yeah, it could well be, especially these long chains. Because the chances are no one at CNN has added dsum-sec.casalmedia.com to the webpage. It's come through this huge list of initiators that go through multiple third parties. Because with ads, they like to share data. And the way they do that is by bouncing from one server to another.
I was not aware of that. So they are sharing data amongst, like services are sharing data amongst each other. And you end up with these kind of patterns then. Yeah.
Let's have a good one. Yes, this is Context Web, Bidder.io, Technorati Media, all the way down to pubmatic.com. Just sharing a bit of information.
So is there a connection happening between each quote unquote share?
There is. So if we went back to the WebPageTest and looked for Technorati Media, and we quickly go back to film strip, you can Command F in here. So that's request 548. That's how frustrating. I'm in incognito, so I can't go back. All right. Request 573. If I click this, does it expand? Yes. So we can see that this was initiated by Pubmatic to Technorati Media, and it's a user sync. So pretty much anytime you see sync in the URL, it is just that sharing information about the visitor between different third parties to build up a profile that is carried with you through the web. This is what the new regulations around third-party cookies, not regulations, but browser-specific implementations of blocking third-party cookies. All of it is trying to stop multiple third parties building up a picture of you as you browse around the web. So the whole point is that with technoratimedia.com, for example, if you visit 3 different pages, like I've just done, CNN, NBC, that they know you're the same person, and they can target their ads back to you.
So I just saw a quick question here. I'm going to post it. I don't know if you can see that, but it says, what are the islands with no connection to the main page? So
the floaters. Yeah, so the floaters are tricky. It's often an iframe. Or in this case, that may be could be a. If nerds like me now, I'm gonna have to find out WMCDP. Receive H2. So I've got initiator here, which is receive v1 reg, and it's the same as this file. So what's happened is there's no initiator to the original /v1/reg. Initiators aren't shared between cross-origin iframes, which is a big cause of those islands. I know that there's a frame ID attached to each request, which might let me stitch them back together. And that's what I'm working on in the beta. So there's no islands in the beta because it's a little bit better at stitching requests back together.
So getting back to the large clusters that are removed from like the www, now the large circles also indicate that there's a significant amount of data being downloaded. Is there any means of finding out? Oh, I guess you would have to look at each cluster, sort of like, I don't know what to call it, the sort of circles individually to see the amount of data being downloaded.
Yeah, it's just eyeballing it, which kind of makes me happy because I like seeing things visually. But yeah, I'm really looking for those long chains, especially if a long chain ends in something big, because that could be something that the site owner isn't aware of.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Like, the further removed and the bigger means it's, it kind of like slid in there. And this might be, if I'm not mistaken, that conversation that Tammy Everts used to have about the fourth party, where something is like so far removed and out of nowhere, it's like kabang, like a 20 meg download.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's often really difficult to understand where they're coming from. So like krxd.net is obviously quite obtuse. Like there's no obvious vendor behind it. So a few of us spend a lot of time doing whois lookups, trying to work out where these domains originate from, so we can add this information like this is actually Salesforce Analytics. It doesn't say analytics-salesforce.com. So oftentimes you'll look at the requests that your pages are making. And because when you build a website, or say in production, you're building a website in a pre-prod environment, oftentimes not with the production ad code and tag manager code. So when it goes live, suddenly there's a whole load of stuff there that you never saw and that you haven't added to the site. So yeah, this is just an attempt to make it a little bit more clear what this data is. Yeah, this is logic. The ml314.com.
Wow.
I reckon that's a reference to pi.
True. And this is impressive because now it's almost like having to, get into these agreements with advertisers, but then they're off creating their own agreements, and them as like third party or fourth from like the original domain are off making their own agreements. It's like having to do a background check on like a bunch of people. Like who are your friends over there?
It's a privacy nightmare.
Yes, must be.
So from a performance perspective, generally, unless there's a really bad implementation, all this does is make your tests take longer.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily impact the user experience at all. but yeah, from a privacy and security standpoint, this makes me kind of itchy, which is why I have ad blocking and tracker blocking at the DNS level at home. No targeted ads for us.
Wow. So this was essentially the CNN representation, right?
Yes.
Wow. I mean, outside of looking pretty, it's kind of like those those poisonous frogs that have like the pretty colors. And then you're like, oh, let me pet this. Your hand goes on fire.
Yeah, there was a comment on Twitter the other day that one looked like a plague. Fair.
That's so funny.
I've got the plague here. It looks very white. So this is another publisher. The beta has a little slider, so you can see
okay.
The film strip view as you're going through the time series and the request map starts populating.
So is this like a request map film strip?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So this is a magazine. We've got our cookie consent banner because I tested from the UK. And the page finishes really about 34 seconds. And then in my web page test script, I click the accept button.
Mm-hmm.
So before we click accept, we've got, not too crazy looking request map. If I turn on the legend, wow, we're grouped by host. So there's a lot of them in total.
Mm-hmm.
Let's group by third party category. So we've got quite a lot of first party, then a few tag managers. So that's a tag manager. That's GTM. We've got content and publishing, which is kind of thing you'd expect for a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
After we click accept, though, I'm just going to click the play up here. Now the fun starts.
Oh my God.
It is like a disease going out on a
This is like SARS.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Cool. One of the things that you often find with request maps like this is you don't know where to start. You don't know how to find something. So this one has a search feature. So if we searched for advertising, I think there is one little bug. I'm just going to switch my grouping to, let's go for host and turn off my legend. So all those pretty colors, every color is a different origin.
Wow.
So rainbow is scary in this context. So we can search for advertising.
This is amazing.
It'll hide anything that isn't ads, which obviously on this page doesn't hide much. But if we wanted to focus on, say, Google, this will show us anything that has Google in the third party or the domain.
Wow. So this is phenomenal, by the way. I wish I had a little a track with hand clapping, because this is amazing. So, okay, so back to this. Okay, so originally I could not see it because I was wondering what the sort of rightmost cluster was connected to, but originally I didn't see that that one line right there. Yeah, it was a little faint.
So yeah, over the share it'll be quite thin.
Oh, it's quite fine now. I see it. So that's like a little solar system of its own, literally.
Yeah. So this is a pre-bidding platform run by the publisher themselves, which then goes out to the different third parties to get sharing information about the visitor and potentially getting ad content back. So we'll see each one of these is probably a different third party. Got Rich Audience, OpenX, another ad provider, Pubmatic. There's OpenX again, Rubicon Project. You see that quite a lot. Serve no bid. This one, this is one of those that's really tricky to identify. If you go to the URL, it will block you. And there's no whois record that's public. There's no reference to it in any documentation. So I have no idea who owns servenobid.com.
Wow. It's like those Russian troll farms. They just,
someone hiding away doing something.
Yeah, it's just like a building with one window.
Yeah.
You have no idea who works there.
Printing money.
Exactly. Oh, wow. This is amazing.
Yeah, so each one of these is probably a different platform for getting ads. In this case, well, this one's GTM, Google Tag Manager,
Mhm,
which then calls out to GA, Google Analytics.
mhm,
So this is the kind of thing that the developer would see
mhm,
when they log into Google Tag Manager.
mhm.
But the rest of it, that could be anything. So this is Web Content Assessor, which is a company called TMT Digital, and I believe this is I want to say a service worker that makes requests and ensures that information isn't being exfiltrated from the page. But I've only got that from their marketing page, so more analysis required.
Wow.
And then all those other third parties are coming out of that.
This is wild. This is wild.
Isn't it? How could you look at this as a website owner and think, yes, this is good?
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, it's like you log in and then the nightmare starts.
Yeah. Oh, you click accept because
Yes.
unless there's a really easy opt-out button, and it's never made as obvious as the opt-in button, is it?
Mhm.
So everyone probably clicks accept. Maybe that's an over-exaggeration, but a lot of people will just click accept all the time.
Yeah.
So if you don't click accept, you get that. If you do, you get this. So it's a good reason to
Incredible.
opt out.
Incredible. This is stunning.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
Wow.
And it's something I think we're quite bad at in general is testing that full user state.
Mhm,
Because it's very easy to go on WebPageTest and run a test against a URL, and you don't think, well, this is a brand new user. It's a baby on the internet that
mhm,
has no cache, that has no browsing history, that doesn't have
mhm,
a profile in the advertisement networks.
mhm.
So this might be less content than a real visitor would see, because suddenly they have a profile. They've clicked on cute baby pictures before, so maybe we should
Mhm.
advertise them pushchairs, prams. That might grow this this request map.
This is wild. Like I'm just getting all this sort of, you know, these sort of scenarios in my head right now. Wow. And this is that was a beta of request map.
Yeah, so if you log on, if you create a request map, you'll
Mhm.
see new request map beta.
Ah.
And I've shared some notes with you, which you can share with the
Mhm.
stream. I do have one day we will switch over. It's a really scary thing to do. But if you say are on the BBC, we got a test result with an ID in the URL. So the bookmarklet just runs a regular expression match against test IDs,
Mhm.
and we'll create a brand new beta request map, which has a progress indicator, which makes me very happy.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
this was Bixie, you said?
This is BBC, yeah,
Oh, BBC.
which is a much calmer
Yeah, I
request
was
map.
gonna say like this looks fun right here. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this is no action.
Oh, here's a nice little feature as well. That hexagon
Okay.
is the LCP for the page.
Oh,
You quickly see which element was captured by as the LCP by Chrome and WebPageTest.
that's cool.
That's really handy.
Nice.
All right. We didn't get to look at many of these. I think that's probably for the best because we'll start getting angry.
I mean, it has been good, but what I was gonna say is, I don't know. I know you had provided some show notes, which I'll be more than happy to share with the audience. Especially, it'll be in the um, video description. But is there a particular? Because I know you had a few in mind. Let me see. What it was? OK Magazine, Harper's. Is there one that you want to take a quick look at before we sort of?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to share was the different ways you can opt into cookies.
Okay.
Because they're not all the same, and it's quite interesting. And I like to test all different ways of opting into cookies.
Mm-hmm.
So here I've got 3 states for the same website.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a publisher, fashion magazine.
Mm-hmm.
At the top, we have loading the page, and there's our cookie accept banner.
Mm-hmm.
With WebPageTest scripts, we can simply click that button.
Mhm.
So I will share this because you can't see. Oh, I can't see the script because I'm incognito. How about that? I shared the script in my show notes. But yeah, I tend to use exec and wait and document.query selector
Mhm.
rather than using the click and wait features in scripting, just because it makes it a little bit easier to maintain your scripts between different testing tools. So find the ID for the accept button, click and wait. And then what I find kind of interesting here is that the modal doesn't disappear for quite a while. And then the page continues to go. So I think we're looking at fully loaded again. So it shows me that when I click opt-in, the page takes 20 seconds longer than if I don't.
Wow.
So this is a
Okay.
good test to run to emulate those first-time visitors who do click the button,
Mhm.
because how often do you test that? The actual clicking
Exactly.
of the button. The other option is to set a cookie in the script. So a simple set cookie against the origin domain. It's kind of tricky sometimes to work out which cookies to set, but
Mhm.
you can have fun looking for it. And so that's the opted-in experience. Slower than baseline, but faster than clicking accept.
Wow. So clicking accept essentially opens up the floodgates.
Yeah. So we can see that the waterfall is actually full of requests, all the way down to 218. It's no 700, but there we go. And there's the gap between WebPageTest waiting for the run to finish and then clicking the button.
Wow. Okay.
So that's with combined steps, the script command to bring it all into one waterfall chart.
Wow.
Compared to the baseline experience, which is done after 72. And if you've got synthetic monitoring, you've got Catchpoint, then if you haven't configured your cookie consent and you have cookie consent, then you're monitoring this experience. You're not monitoring what a consented user, a repeat visitor, is seeing, which could be, well, in this case, not so bad compared to actually clicking the button.
Mhm.
Something there.
Wow.
Like I say, it's an art, not a science. There's so many variables for us to account for, that we need to account for in our
Yep.
performance testing.
And again, I beat this drum quite, I don't want to say often, but I think consistently. There is this just undeniable investigative nature to this line of work. And it's really about just collecting all that we can, read, see, from the waterfall chart to the request map, um, and the film strip, and that together can start to really paint the picture of what is actually taking place, and like that alone right there, dude, that's amazing. Like a film strip for request map, like, again, clapping. When is this beta going to go stable? Yeah.
There is one outstanding bug, which is really frustrating me. But then I think I'll start switching over.
I mean, this is brilliant work. I'm looking forward to seeing. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing people using Request Map in the first place. But okay, what's going on here? Oh, I see. All right, different view.
Yeah, so a hierarchical view which will highlight those really long chains
Yep.
and give you a slightly easier way to follow them back to the
Yep.
origin.
Yep. I see.
What I really like about this is when you toggle it off, it goes.
Hey, look at that physics.
Little things. You can also pause the physics if it's frustrating you and you just want to be able to click on something and have a look, and then it'll come back on.
I mean, folks, this will look really pretty on your Retina screens.
Oh yeah. I've got my 4K monitor tuned down to 720p, so it won't look very good over here.
This is absolutely impressive. And again, I don't know how many people were discovering Request Map for the first time here. It has been around for as we mentioned earlier today, just over 7 years at this point. But if you start to do the math, considering GDPR came about after request map.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and you start to use this kind of tooling in your sort of like site analysis, your perf analysis, your auditing. Something like this is absolutely indispensable. And again, it might be the fact that they know that they have some ads. Okay, cool. I have a deal with an ad provider. They sign the dotted line and everything's hunky dory as they believed. And then they take a look at request map and it's a rave.
Yeah.
Literally.
Everybody's invited.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like no cover, free beer.
Yeah.
And next, you have this madness. And getting back to that original, I guess it was a CSS, pardon me, CSS. Didn't mean to insult you like that. CNN request map that had that one lone cluster with big circles, big problems, and as you said, as a site author, you may not know what's going on. The site's loading, the visual complete is bearable, everything seems relatively fine, but lurking in the background, in the shadows, are these third-party requests from you know shady folks. You can't look them up on LinkedIn. They don't exist. And but that they're showing up with like megabytes and this trail of other requests. You're like, what is really going on here?
Yeah.
This is phenomenal.
Do we need 250K of JavaScript from an advertising provider?
We don't need it on our own domain, let alone someone else.
Yeah, so one comment is, it's all well and good seeing all of this and saying it's kind of bad, but how do we fix it?
Mhm.
And I wish there was an easy answer. I worked with a Dutch airline many years ago who discovered that third parties were a problem.
Mhm.
And they went through a process of evaluating every single third party on the site. You can download a CSV of all of the third parties, so you can review that to your heart's content and tag them, raise JIRAs for them. They ended up getting rid of over half of the third parties on their site because they were trials that hadn't been successful and no one took the tag off the site.
Mhm.
There was no contract in place. No one took responsibility for it. No one was
Mhm.
looking at the data it was generating.
Mhm.
So they all got shifted off and the site performance improved. It's the biggest thing they ever did to improve the performance of their website. And then they introduced a business process. So there were two factors, a business process and a technical process. If someone wanted to get a third party on the site, they weren't allowed to name the third party. They had to write a user story. Like, as an analytics person, I want to be able to see this information.
Mhm.
And then it would go into a queue, and then someone would work out, do we already have this data? Do we have a relationship with a vendor that can provide it? And go through a sensible formal process to work out the best way to get that information.
Yeah.
The second thing was a content security policy.
CSP.
We'll see CSP on banks. We rarely see it on publishers, and this is the reason why. Also rarely on e-commerce or retail. But it's a really useful tool as kind of an engineering organization to lock down what happens on the site.
Yes.
And then people have to request third parties to be added, which means that even if it's just that request process, sending an email, it means you think twice before you just add stuff onto the site.
Yep. Couple questions here. I'm just going to show them. Can you see this on your screen?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Regarding GTM, Google Tag Manager, what's your take on the anti-flicker snippet for A/B tests?
So the anti-flicker snippet is a bit of code which adds CSS to hide your page with opacity 0 until the A/B testing script has run, like Google Optimize.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of that is that you don't get a flicker. That's why it's called anti-flicker, which means that if you're experimenting with turning your buy button from red to blue, you don't see it start red and then flash to blue.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the bane of the performance engineer because by default it has a 4-second timeout.
Mm.
If there's anything wrong with your configuration, such as you've accidentally put the wrong GTM tag in your config,
Mhm.
you have a 4-second delay to every first paint. I don't like anything that blocks render, and anti-flicker snippets block render.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, show a flash or use server-side experimentation. Optimizely X is a server-side platform. There's many others out there. I've forgotten the name of the one I was going to say.
All good.
But yeah, the ROI on A/B testing, I think, is overstated by testing vendors, and that blocking JavaScript is scary.
Yeah.
One of the things that
yeah.
was really exciting to do at Akamai, and you can do it at Fastly and Cloudflare as well, is to modify the page content based on the information you have about the request. So if a request comes in for a page, you can fetch your A/B testing snippet and see if that page is included in any experiments. If it's not, don't inject the anti-flicker snippet and don't inject the A/B testing tag.
Mhm.
That way you limit the scope of your performance impact.
Wow. Wow. Good move. Another question here, I believe, although I didn't see a question mark, but for LCP, what are some good patterns to show a welcome subscribe modal? I know it's annoying, but no chance to fight that battle with marketing, but still not have it affect the LCP.
Yeah, I think I might have an example. Yeah, so in this Harper's Bazaar, if we go back to the test that had a welcome, so this is basically a welcome modal. I just want to quickly see if that's LCP. So
it is. Well, not the middle one.
No LCP. Interesting.
Wow.
So oftentimes you'll see modals or cookie consents are LCP. I think with this, because that image is so large and the modal is a little bit smaller, we'll get away with it. A trick would be to split the text into separate paragraphs, because the text element will then, or each text element will then be smaller than your hero element, which is behind. So your initial LCP will be nice and early, like these are, and it won't be overridden by that future modal showing.
Yeah. So it'll never, yeah, exactly. If anything, it'll be, well, it probably wouldn't be with a background image like that, but you might end up having like half that modal as the LCP, if not the whole, if you get what I'm saying.
I don't, but I think you're probably right.
I mean, yeah. But either way, what I'm saying is like what you said was correct in terms of that. If you split that modal into, or the text into two parts, you won't be able to have like the entire text show up as an LCP. Whereas if anything, it'll be maybe, I think the splitting of the text is absolutely brilliant, because visually it could actually not be different, but through the code it will be. Great question. Simon, I think that was an incredible revelation through a tool that's been around 7 years, that I know I've doodled around with it, but never went deep diving. And I remember the whole time I'm like, man, I can't wait to sit down and really figure out how this thing really bangs out, because I'd played with it and stuff, and I was too busy trying to, make the physics bounce from left to right. It's like, hey,
playing with it.
Exactly. It's like, hey, check out this toy.
Yeah.
But beyond that silly comment, this is incredible. And again, I get back to the comment I made like not too long ago, because there is so much happening behind the scenes now, and this is a visual representation of the potential chaos. Like, even just looking at this right now, I'm looking at those four big blobs midway and near the top of the screen, and it's kind of like, okay, something not nice is happening up there. And again, these are requests from unknown parties, and they are potentially ruining, maybe not the experience, but potentially, but certainly adding to the page weight, um, burning up your data,
Yeah.
easily
Keeping your
burning up.
mobile radio awake. Simple things like that. Draining your battery.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I remember the conversations we were having about that for a while. There was actually this study once upon a time that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, that came out of, like, I think someone at Stanford, and they were doing like some research on battery usage, JavaScript and CSS. And I remember reaching out saying, "Hey, is there a part two here? What's going on?" And it's like crickets, which is all good because it's a lot of hard work. So I get it. I don't want to be that dude.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, this was an incredible 90 minutes of resources, and your workflow and how you look at sites. So I do want to thank you very much for that. Now, um, Simon, I mentioned a some show notes that he had prepared. And guess what, folks? I'm going to share these notes with you right now. And you're going to be able to enjoy them before anyone else, because I was essentially going to keep this for the recording and put this in the notes of the recording, but I'm going to share it. Is Party Town the answer? Well, apparently it's a party everywhere on this page. So here are the show notes. Please enjoy, read them. Simon spent, some time putting this together, and so you're going to see a lot of what we've talked about today in his words. But we are going to have this recording polished up and posted probably by Monday, with the complete notes as you see them there, and other things. But Simon, again, thank you very much. I
Yeah.
think.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me. It's been fun.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. I'm here learning. I'm just here looking pretty and learning. Well, I don't know about the pretty part, but I will say this: that was a fantastic tool that you built 7 years ago, and I'm looking forward to the beta being released out in the wild. Though I'm sure people can play with it now. The other thing I was going to say is, um, if anyone is looking for you, where can they find you? Pardon me.
I am Simon Hearne everywhere. So simonhearne.com, at Simon Hearne on Twitter. Go on. Yes. How about that?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Mr. Hearne. You can find him on Twitter. If anyone has not played with the request map yet, you can do that today. And that is the URL right there to fiddle around with that and get very familiar with this amazing tool. Now, as was demonstrated today, it is a supported and integrated tool into WebPageTest. So while you're doing an audit, profiling a site, you could go right into stay in WebPageTest, and in the pull-down menu, you'll see Request Map, and click on it, and it'll send your test right into Request Map, so you can take a look at that glorious design. Now, what are we going to call that? I know we have waterfalls for, our waterfalls. Like, what should a request map visualization be called?
Why not Request Map?
Okay, I'm down with that.
The first one I called Request Map, but it didn't map requests, and I got kind of upset with myself, which is why version 2 maps requests, not domains.
Okay.
And you can get to the old one, it's domainmap.webperf.tools.
Okay. I mean, I'm down with that request map. Did you
Request
look at the
graph.
request map? Yeah. I like it. I like
Request
it.
Galaxy.
The how about the sour Milky Way? Because it's bad news. I don't know.
Third party plague.
Ooh, I like that. A third party played. That should be like a contest online or something. The best name for a request map. Now, is there so we can find you on Twitter. Web request map is what you're going to. What I want to say is also if anyone is down to help out potentially, I'm sure you'll take contributions from the community.
Yeah, so it's not currently open source.
Okay.
We will, trying to work a way forward to make it open source.
Okay.
But
Okay. Cool.
I will tweet about it when it happens.
Excellent. Please let us know. That said, Simon, thank you very much for your time today. It was a fantastic near 100 minutes. We're just about to hit that in about 30 seconds or so. And again, if anyone wants to find Simon on Twitter, please do find him at Simon Hearne. I posted it, and I'm going to post it again. Of course, this was another edition of WebPageTest Live. Please give real WebPageTest a follow. That's us on Twitter. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them. You could also find me on Twitter as well. You could follow me there. If you have any questions there, I can also do my best to answer them. And that being said, that is the end of today's program. Once again, the notes that Simon created are in the chat. And look for a complete recording, polished up, ready to go on Monday. And that said, have yourself a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll catch you in another 2 weeks. No guest announcement today, but it should come in the next few. All right. Thank you very much for your time, folks.
Bye all.
Good day.